Right, now I can start. So this week it's entitled Infinity versus Eternity. So for a lot of society, infinity is their goal. So is infinity our goal, or eternity, or even heaven? And in actual fact, to infinity and beyond is a contradiction in itself. If it's infinity, you can't go beyond it. It's a mathematical term. So if you ask most children where heaven is, or where God lives, what are they going to do? They'll all point straight up into the sky. The problem, of course, is that straight up isn't straight up. You're on a moving planet. So as they're doing that, they're moving. Our planet is constantly moving because we live on a revolving planet. But Parashah, Genesis, tells us that Yahweh created the heavens, plural, and the earth, singular. And it also says that He created a dome between the waters, dividing the two, and He called the dome sky. How could those that read the original, even calling it the Old Testament, not have missed the part where it talks about it as a dome, and then go on to believe that we live on a flat earth? It baffles me. And it says, then He created light, the sun and the moon, and put them where? In the dome of the sky. So what's the sky? He put the sun and the moon in the dome of the sky. But it's in space, isn't it? So sky must stretch a bit further than we think. It's obviously a bad translation. But below that, He created a multi-layer gaseous atmosphere held in place by gravity. That's a physical reality. But isn't the bit above it space? Well, what He actually said was that the planets, all of them, and the sun and moon, were also placed within the dome. So is it a dome containing a dome? And if it does, then where does Abba actually live? Two things give us a helpful clue and help explain it. As I've explained before, He created time for us to be measured and limited by, but not Himself. He exists outside of time, in a state of eternity, and is therefore not limited by it. Secondly, He's 100% spirit, and thus not motivated, ruled, or limited by human concepts like infinity, which is a mathematical theory that claims that time is limitless. But what it also claims is that it has no beginning or end. Guess who'd like that to be the ideal scenario? The enemy would love time to have no beginning or end. But spiritual concepts can't be explained by secular logic. They can't be understood by human wisdom and understanding. Our universe is merely a tiny part of the kingdom of heaven, ruled over by the King of Kings, the supreme authority, our Abba, who actually created it. And therefore, because it's part of a spiritual realm, we can't see it physically. We can't experience it physically, or even understand it physically, or go there physically. The finite mind cannot fully comprehend this reality. And like everything else that it can't comprehend, it tries to deny it or limit it. So just when do we get to go to heaven? And where is it anyway? It's a spiritual dome that's all around us. He didn't just create a physical dome, He created a spiritual dome. It's all around us. It's a parallel, physically unseen existence working right alongside us. But to experience it fully, we'd have to be like the American astronaut who returned from space and was mockingly asked if he'd seen God up there. And of course he replied, no, but I would have done if I'd opened the hatch and stepped out without the pressure suit. So one day we will step out of this time-shackled physical existence and we will return to our eternal, endless spiritual existence. We will return to our Creator, to the place where Yeshua is. But even better news is that they're already with us in the Spirit, as they promised right now. It said, I will come into your body and set up home. It said the Father will come and set up home within us. Yeshua will come and set up home within us. He'll send us a comforter called the Ruach HaKodesh. They're already here with us spiritually. The fact that we can't see Him with physical eyes is the problem. People say, if I see it, I'll believe it. And I say, no, if you believe it, you'll see it. It's a different concept. So why does Abba set safe limits for our well-being? Certainly not just to spoil our fun, like some people think. He sets boundaries that give us endless freedom within this time-based existence. We have complete freedom, but within boundaries. Not infinity. He sets our lifespan to a physically sensible upper limit of 120 years. Those of us that are getting on a bit, would we really want to go on past 120 physically? I don't think so. I think the vehicle would run out before anything else. I think 120 is more than enough. And He set that time span from the time of Noah to today. The interesting thing is that in fact infinity is actually measurable. All the scientists, all the mathematicians will say, no, you can't measure infinity because it's infinity. I got news for them, you can measure it. Because it's finite. Why? Because it does have a beginning and it will end. It's based on time, and time has a beginning and it will have an end. So it's not infinity, it's finite. Whereas eternity is very different. It exists completely outside of time. It's endless and it's immeasurable. But our biggest problem is that most of mankind tries to live a life outside of Yahweh's set limits and boundaries. In rebellion against Yahweh. Living life on the edge. Pushing the limits in a lemming-like rush over the cliffs of sin. A mass spiritual suicide based on the philosophy that we have the absolute right to do everything our way, regardless of the consequences or the effect it has on others. We've been brainwashed for far too long into believing that we have a right to freedom to speech, no matter how negative and destructive that speech is. That we are free to enslave and slaughter one another in the name of civilization and human progress. That we are legally free to terminate an unborn child's life because it's my body, my choice. We're told that we deserve to live in an upwardly mobile society based on unbridled greed that results in millions of others being starved, enslaved and exploited just to make that possible. We're told that the rich deserve to get richer and the poor poorer, based on warped evolutional survival of the fittest racial superiority theories. Selfishness says it's all about me. I'm my own God. I'm at the centre of my own self-created universe, and everything has to revolve around me. This philosophy, of course, is a natural consequence of man's rebellions against Yahweh. It's the tainted fruit of a diseased root. What needs to change is not the fruit, but the root itself. It needs to be healed and then grafted into a healthy vine, into a healthy olive tree. It needs to be healed and regrafted in to the healthy olive tree that it came from in the first place. Producing a change of heart, a restored, redeemed spirit, submitting to Yahweh and following His principles and His guidelines. Not just some feel-good religious experience, but a day-by-day practical transformation of lifestyle, rubber hitting the road. An attitude change made possible by our trust and complete submission as we let Him restore and rebuild our characters and completely reset our moral compass. Most people's moral compass today points north and are told it's south. It's totally the opposite of what it should be, and it needs to be reset. And the reason it needs to be reset is because it's been focused in the wrong place. It's been pointed to the wrong place instead of being pointed to Abba. If our moral compass is pointed towards Abba, it will be accurate. If it's not, it won't. Will it happen instantly? No. As we all know. But if we're willing to surrender our old ways of thinking, our old self-seeking focus, and take it just one small step at a time, we will get there. Many of us are actually a lot further along this process than we were before. We may be not as far as we would like to be, or even expect to be, or as quickly as we like. And the reason we get depressed is because we look at somebody else and they suddenly come shooting past us. And we think, look at them, look at the spirituality, and they're doing this and they're doing that, and they're evangelizing, and they're... It evens out in the end. Speed's not the answer. And often they'll do that, and they won't deal with something else, and suddenly they'll come crashing down. I know from experience that when you think you're doing well and you're doing well spiritually and you're involved in Christian radio and you think this, that and the other, what you find is after a couple of years you still have to come back and do the basics. You think you've skipped them, but no matter how far you get, no matter what you do, it's not safe to continue until you've completed the basics and let Him do a character rebuild. And the reason a lot of ministries crash is because they've never allowed Him to rebuild their character. Never allowed Him to deal with things that should have been dealt with. And that's why I say, don't turn around and say, use me, but please turn around and say to Him, do not use me till I'm ready. Don't let me go. Don't send me until I'm ready, because I'll crash and burn and I'll act in a negative way upon the people I go to. And they'll be totally destroyed when they see me crash and burn. So it's one small step at a time. But be encouraged, take heart. No matter what speed we go, and we are moving forward, we can be rebuilt. Abba has the skill and the technology if we let Him come all the way into our lives. Trouble is we set up barriers. We set up this is my life and this is how far you come, and I'll talk to you at the weekend. We have to let Him have all of our lives, not just part of it. He doesn't want part. He either wants all of it or none of it. We're just fooling ourselves if we think we can just give him a little bit. Remember the old one step forward and two step back method that we used to have? I remember those days. In fact, sometimes it used to be one forward and three back. It's connected to our old, going backwards way of life. But the kingdom way is completely different. It's our new way. The kingdom way is one step back occasionally, but always two forwards. Always achieving overall progress. If we take a step backwards from time to time because we've had something hit us, that's fine, but we take two forward. We keep moving forward. We don't look back. The only thing that can hold you back is you. If you feel you're being held back, then you're being held back by you. It is totally your choice to stop serving the life sentence that's been imposed on you by others. But that can only have an effect if it's been accepted and agreed to by you. And Abba's message today is be bold, break free, take the unconditional pardon that's on offer, accept the forgiveness that has been paid for in full by your kinsman redeemer, Yeshua, HaMashiach, and take that first step out of the self-imposed mental prison that you're living in, and finally let go of the past. If you haven't let go of the past, then you're in a mental prison. You're a life sentence. And it's time to realise that that life sentence has been dealt with. There's a pardon on offer. But it's up to you to accept it. It's time to let go of the past and let it be consigned to the scrap heap where it belongs and dealt with once and for all. Not over and over and over again, endlessly. Once a day, once a week, once a month, year in, year out. What he's saying is it's time to be obedient and move forward beyond the constant guilt trips, the what ifs, the if onlys, and the I'll cry if I want to self-pity parties. What have you got to lose? Don't even think about playing the blame game anymore. My parents caused it. It's all their fault. The constant whining is getting old. It's time today to start taking full responsibility for your own choices and your own mistakes. You're not a child anymore. You are an adult. So put away childish behaviour. If you're still doing something that you shouldn't, or don't like the way you're doing things, then deal with it. Make a decision and choose to change with Abba's help. It's what adults do. Nobody's holding a gun to your head. Nobody's making you do anything that you haven't decided to go along with. If you're willing to change and you want to change, all you have to do is ask Abba and he'll show you how and help you to do it. And whether you realise it or not, he knows every one of your strengths and weaknesses better than you do. So you are the only one fooling yourself if you think that you're the only one who sees them and knows about them and hides them. Just think just how much these changes can and will transform your life and the lives of those around you. And then even more importantly, they will hopefully learn by example from your progress. Because whether you realise it or not, they are looking to you as a trusted role model. Whether you like it or not, you are a leader. Somebody is watching you. Somebody is following you. A lot of them you will never know. the people that watch you. They're not more interested in what you say, they're interested in watching you, and they'll watch you and they'll learn from it, one way or the other. You say, but I don't want to be a leader. Tough. If you're there and they're there, you're a leader and they're following. And how they lead in the future will depend very much on what they see. A Jewish scientist, Albert Einstein, concluded and proved that time is relative and not absolute. And he said in 1952, it appears therefore more natural to think of physical reality as a four-dimensional existence, instead of, as hitherto, the evolution of a three-dimensional existence. He believed that there is no true division between the past and the future. In fact, there's rather a single existence. In other words, he had a glimpse of eternity or timelessness, not infinity. And in fact, with the proper technology, such as a very fast spacecraft, one person is able to experience the passing of several days, while another person simultaneously experiences only a few hours or minutes. The same two people can meet up again, one having experienced days or even years, while the other has only experienced a few minutes. And in fact, the person in the spacecraft only needs to travel near to the speed of light, because the faster they travel, the slower their time will pass, relative to someone who's planted firmly on Earth. So if they were able to travel at the speed of light, time would stop completely. Sounds like eternity to me. Isn't it interesting that time is tied in to light and the speed of light? If you were able to travel at the speed of light, time would cease to exist.
I was listening to the scientists talking about the Kessel Run, Star Wars, the Millennium Falcon, and apparently by the time Han Solo did the Kessel Run and did his delivery and came back, it would have 72 years would have passed for the person waiting for him.
Yes, that's right. They would escape time completely, suspended in a state of timelessness, almost like eternity. A taste of the place where time is not just suspended, but it doesn't exist at all. That's the point about eternity. Time doesn't exist. Time was created here on earth. All the things were put in place to govern time and seasons. So when we come on Shabbat, we're outside of that system. And we are in a timeless environment, effectively. We're just spending time with Him, and however long it takes doesn't matter, because we're not ruled by time. We get a taste of the place where time is not just suspended, but doesn't exist at all. So your infinite responsibility is to make the most of the time that you have. It will run out. This is not a rehearsal. You heard that before, right? Life is not a rehearsal. You only get one crack at it. I'll do it later. You might not have later. The time to do it is today, to make the most of each day. And remember that everything you do will have eternal consequences. So, Shalom Nitchi Mishtakan, eternity dwellers. Shalom. So there was a bit of science mixed in there.